Welcome to the Good Fight podcast, our very first podcast at the Good Fight. I am your host and TGF editor, Jason Langendorf, and today I'm going to be joined by contributor Lucas Ketelle, as well as Lily Ulloa in just a few moments. It is Thursday, July 9th, and because boxing is going to boxing, this is your first 3-minute roundup. Waiting for Lukey to come in. There he is. Lukey, how are you?
Real good. Real good.
Good. So this is our first podcast. You and me, we're riding high again. We're gonna hit the highlights here of the news of the day or the past few days. So first question: Shakur Stevenson signed with Zuffa Boxing, the upstart promotion's biggest signing so far. I want to know from you, what does that signal, if anything, and what kind of fights can we expect for Stevenson moving forward?
So my immediate reaction was it benefits both parties, and then it has the potential to have blowback, military term. It's fun to use. But where I say it benefits both parties is Zuffa's looking for a high-profile pound-for-pound number one fighter. Ding, ding, ding. Shakur Stevenson fits that bill. Shakur Stevenson wants to get paid a lot of money, and this is a great opportunity to get paid a lot of money by Zuffa, who are willing to give out big checks for that thing. The catch is Zuffa Boxing seems to me to be about really exciting back and forth action fights. Now, you and I both know Shakur Stevenson's MO isn't typically action fights. He likes to win in your beloved Chicago Bears style 9-6. He likes to make it tactical, slow down fights. I'm quite a fan, and I think he's one of the best fighters in the world. But I'm interested to see the reaction because he's going to be billed, and rightfully so, as one of the best in the division. But is there going to be any pushback if he has a performance that isn't that of what people's expectation of a dominant number one pound-for-pound fighter?
Yeah, and it seems like Zuffa may have some issues potentially getting in the right fights. Obviously, his style could make that a little more difficult, but we've already seen him in a lot of fights that we would probably not rather run back. Next up, DAZN and Premier Boxing Champions announced a deal. It kind of further shifts not only the broadcast landscape in boxing, but also maybe the kinds of fights that we can expect to be made. What's your take on that alliance?
Confusing. I mean, the press conference today was very strange. We had some fights somewhat announced. You have Fundora on the stage, you've got Brandon Figueroa, and then we jump into a Rolly Teofimo press conference, which I would just say was chaotic at best. I think it's good when we can get promoters getting dates, but here's the troubling thing I'm seeing with DAZN, and I want you to push back on me as just like a whatever I look like man. Fighters or these companies don't seem to have dates in the future consistently. So when's Top Rank coming back? We don't know. When's the next Golden Boy show? So though they're with DAZN, I like the idea of now we can mix and match and make great fights. The one fear I have is how many shows will be afforded to PBC, because we just saw with Top Rank, we did this whole spiel earlier in the year about how they got this deal, and I think they've only run 2 shows so far through the DAZN partnership. So I just want to see more of how many fights are upcoming before I comment, because we could be back to a rock and a hard place with not as many fights depending on the fight dates.
Yeah, I mean, it's all theoretical at this point, and in theory, I think that's a good thing for boxing fans. But we see it all the time. Promoters can't get out of their own way. There are enough issues between the money and how often people want to fight, and who's the A side, who's the B side, all the usual nonsense. I do think you've got the right idea. It kind of let's take a we'll see attitude. Show us, don't tell us. On to the next. Earlier this week, Raleigh Romero Teofimo Lopez Jr. fight for the welterweight title on August 22nd was announced. And today they had the press conference, as you mentioned. First question, do you like the fight? And then second, who do you like in the fight?
I do like the fight, but I think it's selfish because when Terrence Crawford fought Jeff Horn, I went to that fight, and the two fighters I shot video coverage of in Vegas, Rolly Romero and Teofimo Lopez. So if this was 9 years ago, I would have had pay-per-view all access, skip ahead. So I think there's a level of fondness seeing people from the ground level not making a ton of money going to this top level. With Teofimo, there's a level of chaos that honestly makes me a little worried at times. It just seems like a um, lightning in a bottle situation, and sometimes lightning misses the bottle. And
Yeah.
with Rolly, he's like really well grounded and almost normal now. He's almost like a guy who works a day job. He's not
Yeah,
the
what's with
same.
that? He's
I don't
changed quite a
know.
bit all of a sudden, right?
But then it's like, okay, we go like, what's with that? But maybe that's maturity. Like boxing's one of these bad sports where someone could mature, grow up, and be like a well-rounded person. And we're like, what gives, man? We wanted you to be the crazy guy.
Well, we've
So,
also seen some of these guys realize or just get fatigued by the act trying to keep that up, and they realize most fight fans, real fight fans, just want to see the fights. They want to see a good fight. They don't need all the nonsense.
look, I think Rolly's going to make great fights with whoever he fights because he's fearless and he believes in his power and he's going to initiate fights. And there's a level of balls that he has in the ring that not a lot of fighters have. So no matter what, Teofimo is going to have to engage with him because Rolly does that. For me, it comes down to what Teofimo has at this point. You know, if you're a contrarian, you could really point holes and go, okay, maybe Lomachenko was a little banged up or took him lightly when they fought. I mean, Taylor never looked good after that Teofimo. So the positive is you say, okay, Teofimo did something and then he never recovered. But then a real dissenting view could go, okay, Jack Catterall probably beat Taylor, and then he just kind of Teofimo piggybacked off of that one. So I think and I think Teofimo gets how important this fight is. He at the press conference he was talking about how the importance of being a 3 division champion, but I really feel like his career is on the line. Whereas Rolly is someone where if he gives a good account for himself, he'll keep getting fights. I'm not sure Teofimo would get that many more opportunities if he were to lose in marquee spots. I think he might be brought in to fight guys like Keyshawn Davis and such.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could see him. He's going to continue fighting as long as he wants, but is he going to get the good fights? Is he going to get the kind of fights that we have expected out of him these last few years, and what his talent kind of demands? All right. Well, now we're going to bring in our another contributor and our good friend Lily Ulloa. Gosh, I cannot get that right the first time, and I'm sorry, Lily. Let's see. Hopefully, she's joining us in a moment. Lily wrote an excellent piece this week about Floyd Mayweather Jr. and the issue of financial literacy in boxing. It's something that if you follow boxing, we know by now is, something that's been a problem for quite some time. And I think we've seen it over the years in other sports, whether it's the NBA, the NFL, but it has persisted in boxing, and it's probably been even worse in this sport than in any others. And so, welcome, Lily. Thank you for joining us.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great. So Lily's piece is called "The Cost of Being Money," and you can find it on the Good Fight Substack at thegoodfight12.substack.com. You can find all of our content there. New subscribers get a week free, and if you upgrade to a paid sub to get everything we do, it's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and I promise you that's a steal. So Lily, I want to talk to you a little bit about the story. So you spoke to Oscar De La Hoya, who kind of famously fought Mayweather in 2007. And those two have feuded really ever since. But you spoke to Oscar. Were you surprised at his reaction to Mayweather's lawsuits and kind of the other financial entanglements he's up against right now?
Yes, first of all, hi everyone, especially Gail in the chat. I love you, Gail. But yes, I was very surprised because we know Oscar as of recently as a very like he will troll you and he does his clap back Thursdays. So I'm like, oh, he's about to clap back, and we've heard him be kind of sound like a bitter ex-girlfriend even sometimes, right, about Mayweather. But he was actually like, oh, is it real? He was like, is that even real? And everybody was like, yeah, they just came out. And he was like, oh man, like it's so sad, and he just kind of felt sorry for him. So it was surprising to me. I thought he was gonna clap back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, that's been his MO. Um, well, what drove you to write about this story in the first place? Was it just kind of the randomly, hearing Oscar respond that way? Did you have thoughts about doing this before?
I had once wanted to write a piece about how a lot of, retired fighters don't really have like a retirement plan, and how they never had health insurance and things like that. But I seem so vague, and everybody uses the same Pritchard cologne. They milk that clip for that clip for clicks and things. So I was like, oh, it just kind of always sat in the back of my head, and it wasn't really Oscar as much as it was seeing that it had hit the mainstream. Like YouTubers were talking about it, like commentary slop YouTubers were talking about Mayweather, and I was like, oh, maybe it's my turn to write about it. So it was kind of like I feel like maybe now I can have a say in this too.
Well, and you did. I was truly a wonderful piece. You didn't. It wasn't just, as I messaged you earlier today. It wasn't just anecdotal. You brought some. You brought a study into it. You brought Oscar's words into it. You really kind of broke down what the issues are there. Um, so, with what you found out, and kind of as you've thought about this over time, if we could make you the czar of boxing, the queen of boxing for a day, how would you go about addressing the financial literacy problem in the sport?
I think I would make like every fighter's contract include that the promoter gives them some sort of literacy class or like financial literacy, or take maybe a workshop or something. I think I mentioned to you too that Robert, I wrote about it in the story, but Robert has this guy who he sponsors a lot of fighters, but he's also like one of those financial advisors. And that guy connects them to other guys. And like Oscar says, you have guys and guys and guys, and they kind of all check each other. And if one guy fucks up, then the other one's out of money too. So for the best interest of everyone to not scam, but you got to have the right people. So it was kind of, I would have it that way to where promoters I already feel like don't even do enough, in my controversial opinion. A lot of times they blame the fighters for not being Instagram content creators, like Ryan Garcia, right? To like why they don't get popular. So I feel like they should have that kind of going there where I don't know who would enforce this. I would enforce it, right? I'm the
You're
ruler
the
here. I'm
you're
the
the czar. You're
dictator.
the queen.
So I would say that. I would say that every promoter has in place that they will give the fighter some sort of, I don't know, maybe even if it's just college credit courses where they talk about, and then just real life examples. When they take you, I've never gotten a DUI, but I have friends who, and they're like, they took me to the morgue. I feel like kind of things like that, where it's like you bring in these fighters who talk about maybe their struggles. I talk about Sarate, and that's how another way where that's what inspired the first kind of story I wanted to write about the retired fighters, because he was like, yeah, the WBC helps me and they pay every now and then, they pay me for some things, but this is how I make my money, signing things and memorabilia and taking pictures with people like you. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like someone who was like filling arenas and like so celebrated and talked so, historically, imagine like this such a big figure is just signing autographs now. It's kind of like, a little grim. So yeah, I think that's what it would be. I'll put it on the promoter.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, all power to those guys. If you're signing autographs, if you're doing shows, that's great. But if you have to do that to survive, when you were selling out arenas and making the kind of money that frankly you should have been, those guys deserve to hold on to it. And as we know, a lot of these guys have things a little bit tougher health wise later in their lives when they really need that money. Sometimes it's not there. Um, okay, well, that's going to do it for us today at the Good Fight podcast. This is our first one. We'll see how this develops in the future. But be sure to check out our YouTube channel. It's at the Good Fight 12, where this week we've added videos featuring Errol Spence Jr. and Jamal Charlo training and interviews from their media workout in Houston. Those were with Lily. Thank you again, Lily, for that. We've also got the latest TGF post-fight show, a recap of Abdullah Mason, Albert Bell, and 4th of July fight card in Cleveland, which we obviously don't see very often. And then Lukey's interview with budding amateur superstar and 2028 Olympic hopeful Marcus Luther. And Lukey, thank you for that. Also hit up the TGF Substack for brilliant writing. We've got the best in the business, I promise you. We've got reporting, analysis, opinion. We've got kind of a murderer's row of boxing journalists. So come check us out. The highlights this week include Bill Detloff's gutting piece on the search for former title holder and Olympic great Mark Breland. It's called Mark Breland, Casualty of War. That one's free to all. So come check us out in the Substack, but just feel free to look it up as well. Also, we've got David Greisman's excellent look in on Jonathan Banks and Kronk Jim, which is titled The Door to Pain and Fame. So thank you for joining us for the Good Fight podcast. Come join us again. We're going to keep doing this. If we get the kind of response we're looking for, we'll see you at the fights.